So this is our first panel discussion of the day, which is bringing together senior members of local government across the north. So if I could just ask my panel to make their way up to the stage. We have Geoff Driver, leader of Lancashire County Council and chair of Transport for Lancashire, Angela Jones, Assistant Director of Economy and Environment at Cumbria County Council, Frank Jordan, Executive Director of Place and Acting Deputy Chief Executive of Cheshire East Council, Sir Richard Leese, Leader of Manchester City Council, Mark Lynam, Director of Strategy and Corporate Affairs at Sheffield City Region Executive Team, and we also have Liam Robinson, who is Liverpool City Council's lead on transport, Chair of Mersey Travel, and he is stepping in for Mayor of Liverpool, Joe Anderson, who can't make it today. So thank you very much, everyone, for being with us. Obviously, you represent various areas across the north, so can I just ask you all in turn, from nearest to me, to introduce yourself and just say a little bit about the transport priorities that are pertinent to your areas. So, Richard first, please.
Richard Leese, Leader of Manchester City Council, but also have been on Transport for the North, Rail North since well, actually almost since before they were created, really, so very involved in pan-northern developments. I think there are a whole series of priorities for Greater Manchester. It's developing our Greater Manchester Plan to 2050 with a Greater Manchester Transport Fund 2 to follow on from the very successful first Transport Fund. It is delivering high speed to Manchester and actually the whole of the High Speed 2 network, and then hopefully planning to take it beyond. And not just Northern Powerhouse Rail, although that's very, very important. There are a range of improvements that are required to pan-northern transport, and then there is the development of international links for Manchester and North, both through our ports, and I think particularly at either end of the M62, but also through long haul through Manchester Airport, and perhaps things that government might do, like getting rid of ADP, that would help us build international links from the north.
Mm-hmm. Great. Geoff.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Geoff Driver, Leader of Lancashire Council and Chair of Transport for Lancashire. I think perhaps the first thing I want to say is, unlike Richard, Lancashire is a two-tier organisation, and we don't have the advantage, if that's the right word, of a combined authority and or an elected mayor. So we have to achieve everything that we try to do within that setting, which sometimes isn't quite as easy as it might appear. We have achieved much in terms of a growth deal over 300 million and a city deal over 400 million, which in themselves include many, many transport infrastructure schemes. But we need to do more, and we hope to do more, and we have certain priorities in that. But the biggest priority for Lancashire and the best improvements we can make for the Lancashire economy are the links to the east, particularly improving the rail links to the east, to West Yorkshire, North Yorkshire and beyond, and that's very much at the heart of the Northern Powerhouse, and has the potential to provide much of the economic growth for the Northern Powerhouse. And in addition to that, we're going to work very closely with Transport for North in the terms of developing their strategic corridor philosophies, in particular the Central Pennine and the links with Sheffield through Manchester and Lancashire up to the Northumbria, to the Cumbrian coast, so far as the advanced manufacturing is concerned. And of course we're looking to link the energy coast. Within Lancashire itself, we're going to continue to develop the M65 corridor with improvements to rail and road links to provide house building and job opportunities. And we're going to enhance the work that's been done on the link between Heysham and the M6 to provide better facilities for that part of the county, and particularly to enable the further development of Heysham Port and the links with Belfast and Northern Ireland. We have many other schemes going on in Lancashire, but perhaps I'll leave you at that.
Thanks, Geoff. You touched on the energy coast there, so I think that's a good time for Angela to pick up about your priorities for Cumbria.
Yeah, thank you. It's a good segue. I'm Angela Jones. I'm Assistant Director for Economy and Environment with Cumbria. David mentioned earlier around the capabilities of the North and made reference to Cumbria. We have a very strong sense of place in Cumbria, but we have a very strong economy which has potential to grow further with both advanced manufacturing sector, energy, renewables and clearly the nuclear sector, as well as our visitor economy, which is over 41 million visitors a year. All of this, along with a pipeline of projects coming to Cumbria equaling around £25 billion worth of investment, means that connectivity is critical for us to be able to unlock that full potential. So whilst transport and infrastructure we see as an enabler, we also need the right skills, we need the right housing, supply chain. So for us it's a package, but we're working with Transport for the North on the corridors, as we mentioned earlier, the coastal rail line, connecting the energy coasts, connection through from the M6, Transpennine, A66 dualling, and clearly linking in with HS2, smart ticketing. For us, it's about making sure that there is a local, regional and national pipeline of projects and that we have confidence to be able to deliver those, to secure the right investment, and we need upfront investment. Particularly with lead-in times, we have a huge amount of growth, as I've mentioned, but we need the right railroad, ports and facilities to be able to unlock that.
Thank you. Frank?
Good morning, I'm Frank Jordan, I'm Executive Director of Place for Cheshire East Council. I also represent the Constellation Partnership, which is a major growth corridor which stretches from North Wales through Cheshire into Staffordshire. And the key thing around the Constellation Partnership, what we want to do, is use the fact that we've got HS2 coming to Crewe into the sub-region as the game changer. What that will do is actually, we believe, create a new reason for people investing in the sub-region. Particularly what we want to do is actually bring people to live and work in the sub-region. We want to use the investment that will unlock to regenerate places like Stoke and make that a very vibrant city, but also use that to regenerate key sites around Crewe. So in terms of the key infrastructure, we already know HS2 is coming to Crewe. The next thing we need to do is make sure we land that properly, so we want to create the right type of enhanced station around Crewe, which not only connects HS2 with regional rail connectivity properly, but also creates the right sense of place when you first arrive in Crewe, because I think when you arrive in Crewe at the moment, I don't think you believe you've actually just landed in Cheshire. And we think Cheshire's actually a really strong brand that we want to capitalise on, so we want to create not only a great station, but also a great town. And what this will all do, we believe, is create quite significant demand for housing and for employment sites. We believe we'll deliver at least 62,000 houses over and above what we've already got planned in our local plans across the sub-region. So what we need to do is get the infrastructure right to be able to enable us to deliver the right housing sites in the right places and also deliver the employment sites. So really what we want to do at the moment is actually highlight the fact that we've actually got a significant opportunity of investment and start talking to people about how they would want to work with us to actually make the whole sub-region very vibrant and make it a strong part not only of the sub-region but also for the national economy as a whole.
Mark?
Hi there. Mark Lynam, Director of Strategy and Corporate Affairs at Sheffield City Region. We're doing a huge amount of work at the moment to refresh both our economic priorities and transport priorities as a city region. Over the last 5 years, Sheffield City Region has made a huge amount of progress. We set ourselves a target of 70,000 jobs 5 years ago to achieve that over a 10-year period. We're currently exceeding that. The city region's experienced its first net growth in private sector jobs in a generation. So we're now asking ourselves the question of kind of, well, what's next? What can we focus on as a city region with our partners to push that growth further? And that is likely to be built around our expertise, our specialisms around advanced manufacturing, materials and engineering, very much spread out across the city region, but anchored at the key facilities at the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre on the border of Sheffield and Rotherham, which earlier this year we announced a couple of significant investments by Boeing and McLaren, Boeing's first major investment outside of America. Now, obviously, supporting that, we need to set out our own transport priorities. Our transport strategy is currently kind of 5 or 6 years out of date. It was done at a time before TFN. It was done at a time before we were currently as advanced as we are with HS2. So we're going through a process of refreshing that at the moment, but because we didn't want to stand still, because we wanted to be in a position to respond to Transport for the North's STP. Last week we published our transport prospectus, which set out our priorities on a national, pan-northern and a local level as to what we expect from some of those major schemes, such as HS2, such as Northern Powerhouse Rail, but also what Sheffield City Region can do and what our own transport priorities are. And of course, that contains the usual chestnuts around HS2, Northern Powerhouse Rail, making sure we get some kind of road solution to Trans-Pennine connectivity. But actually, because we are a polycentric city region, the biggest transport priority we have is creating a fully integrated mass transit, multimodal mass transit network. We have a situation at the moment between our 4 principal towns that at least 2 of those doesn't actually have a direct rail link. Now, if we are to continue to support the growth we've seen over the last 5 years, solving those kind of internal problems and challenges around our transport network is actually going to be the biggest challenge and opportunity for us than anything provided by HS2, MPR or Trans-Pennine connectivity.
Thank you. Liam?
Okay, good morning everyone. I'm Liam Robinson, I'm the Chair of Mersey Travel and I lead on transport for the Liverpool City Region's Combined Authority, and just like Richard, I've been involved in Rail North and Transport for the North for the past few years, and we've got a full portfolio of infrastructure priorities, but the overarching number one priority for us is Northern Powerhouse Rail, that brand new twin track line from Liverpool linking us across to Manchester onto the HS2 network, which we see as the kind of starting point of that new west-east railway linking the north of England. We think that's really important, not just because we want to see journey time improvements. So, for example, this morning I could have got here from Liverpool to Manchester in 20 minutes, but actually even more important for us is the fact that it will release capacity on the conventional rail network. One for more local journeys, local commuting journeys in and out and around our city region, but crucially also as well so we can actually release a lot of capacity on the conventional rail network for the movement of freight. And that's absolutely vital as part of the multimodal answer for this expansion and growth of the Port of Liverpool. When we think about just how kind of important the growth of the Port of Liverpool is, not just for our city region, but for the whole of the north of England, we need to make sure that we've got a whole kind of raft of multimodal interventions that will facilitate that. As part of Northern Powerhouse Rail, we think there's a fantastic opportunity for a new station solution in and around the Lime Street station area, so yeah, a great opportunity for a pole of growth in its own right at the heart of Liverpool city centre, and a number of other infrastructure priorities, road solutions both for the Port of Liverpool and also Liverpool Airport, a whole raft of different improvements on the local rail network, really to make sure that we've got the capacity to deal with the significant increase in local rail journeys that we know is going to happen over the next 30 years. And also as well, there's a number of infrastructure priorities linking our city region to the west, to North Wales and particularly North East Wales, when we think about just how important their economy is to ours and how by strengthening those links we can really sort of unlock a lot of growth in our city region, our near neighbours, and really kind of maximise the potential from that.
Thank you. So a big thrust, the whole point of transport for the north particularly, is to kind of be a pan-northern voice to lobby government and get the changes we need. I mean, were you all working efficiently in a cross-border sense previously? Is TFN kind of badging something that we, as northern leaders, you were already doing, or has there been a momentum change? Is there a step change? Richard? Well,
I'm not quite sure when we started work on what became Rail North, but I'm guessing it's about 5 years ago now. And the objective then was for the North to take control over the existing rail franchises when they came up for re-tendering. And through that process, we created an organisation that includes every northern transport body within it, and we were heavily involved in the refranchising process. And the two northern rail franchises are no longer managed by DfT on their own from London. They're managed jointly with Rail North from an office in Leese. So we've gone a long way to, first of all, uniting across the north on transport issues, but also doing something with it. And similarly, the One North plan that was produced by the northern cities got buy-in from every transport authority across the north, which led to the creation of Transport for the North. And the Northern Independent Economic Review, which I think David Brown was talking about, was again something that got every single local authority, every single tier, and every single local enterprise partnership in the north signed up to it and supporting what it had to say. So we are where we are now after about 5 years' work, but what that 5 years' work has demonstrated, that if the north does act as one, if we do get our act together, then we're able to make a real difference. We've got some real challenges coming up with Northern Powerhouse Rail, some real challenges of how it interfaces with High Speed 2 in particular. We're going to have some road challenges, particularly on corridors like the Manchester-Sheffield corridor, and we're only really going to meet those challenges if we continue to be a united north of England.
Mm-hmm. Geoff, do you feel that areas like Lancashire are getting a strong voice and an equal share, or do you think that there's still a lot of momentum being pulled towards main conurbations such as Manchester?
Yeah, Richard's absolutely right. A lot of work's already gone on, and we need to keep that momentum going. I would say this, wouldn't I? But Lancashire probably hasn't had its fair share, and that might be because of the circumstances I outlined in my initial address, where we're a two-tier organisation, and sometimes it's not easy to get all the local authorities speaking with the same voice as it is in an area like Greater Manchester. But yes, that momentum is going. Yes, we will keep pushing for it. And yes, we will try and ensure that Lancashire gets its fair share, because we have a lot to offer. And if the Northern Powerhouse is going to produce the improvements in the economy that are needed in the north of England, Lancashire has a very important part to play in that, and we will do our best to make sure we do.
Thank you. Mark, I mean, you're our representative on the other side of the Pennines today. In terms of that cross-border pan-northern working, are you feeling that Yorkshire is getting an equal voice or struggling to be heard at all?
I think at the moment, if you talk about anything to do with Yorkshire, obviously there comes the complications around devolution at the moment, and the ongoing issues at our side of the Pennines around what the best geography and what the best spatial area is to tackle these kind of issues, both in terms of economic but also transport priorities. But certainly, I suppose from our side of the Pennines, Sheffield City Region, there is the difference in a similar but slightly different fashion to Lancashire, in the fact that we don't have a single dominating, if you like, city at the heart of it. Sheffield is obviously the biggest game in town, but obviously Barnsley, Doncaster and Rotherham and the North Nottinghamshire and North Derbyshire districts have got a significant role to play as well. So that's why we spoke earlier around the fact that actually the biggest challenge for us is not necessarily the huge opportunity, which it is, to connect to places such as Sheffield up to Manchester and Leeds, either through NPR or through the road links through Trans-Pennine connectivity, but actually connecting up those towns and cities we've got on our side of the Pennines. That's the biggest opportunity and challenge.
Mm-hmm. And Angela, as another kind of representative of perhaps somewhere that may not have got the investment that you'd like to have had previously, how are you making sure that Cumbria's voice is heard now?
Well, I'd echo what Geoff said, really, that I think there was a lot of work already happening at Pan North, but we've certainly had an opportunity through Transport for the North to demonstrate the evidence for Cumbria about our offer. We've got one of the second largest GVA uplifts. There's a lot more than just the mountains. Obviously, people know Cumbria for the Lake District, but we have got a really strong emerging advanced manufacturing sector, plus the nuclear and energy sector. So we feel we've had that opportunity to be able to put that evidence, and it's about evidence. Let's face it, when you're looking at transformational economic growth, you have to have the evidence to underpin why you need that infrastructure to be able to deliver that. And we've been able to demonstrate that and have had that voice, which is we've really welcomed. Obviously, it's early days, but how we see ourselves is working with the other authorities across the north. So it's not just about Cumbria, this is about the pan-northern offer to the UK economy, and we have a part, just as everyone else here has also.
Mm-hmm. And Frank, in terms of getting HS2 to Crewe, but that not just being the end of the journey, but ensuring the right investment around that area, are you having the conversations you feel like you need to have, or is it kind of HS2 to Crewe, box ticked, move on.
I think the last 6 months has been quite an interesting journey. So what we've actually been able to do is join up HS2, Network Rail and DFT together. But it's been the local area that's actually done that. And I think that was potentially a risk. Actually, what we're going to get is HS2 coming to Crewe. That was potentially actually going to get in the way of regional rail improvements. And I think by having the conversation at a strategic level, we're also been able to demonstrate that HS2 coming to Crewe and come to the sub-region is not really a rail project. Rail project is at the heart of it. It was actually a significant growth project. And it's about actually bringing growth out of the southeast and bringing in with investment to a sub-region that actually has a strong economy but has strategic risks, such as lack of housing or lack of skills. So without the connectivity, we aren't able to continue to have a strong economy. So I think we are starting to have that conversation, but I think it's been the local area, and I think that's the advantage of having local partnerships. What local partnerships can do is bring central government, the private sector and the public sector together to turn all the different projects, sequence them right, and then turn them into actual product on the ground.
Great, and Liam, you're balancing, you said about high-speed rail and the Liverpool connection, but also local improvements and local changes. How are you balancing and enabling both of those priorities?
Variety of different ways, obviously working very closely through Transport for the North as that kind of key conduit for the whole of the North. But actually we're getting stuck into the work ourselves. So one good example is a lot of the kind of economic work we've done on the value of that kind of Northern Powerhouse rail link into Liverpool. We know that from our initial assessments, the cost of it would be somewhere in the region of about £3 billion. But when we've done the economic impact assessments, we know that it could generate up to £16 billion worth of economic growth for our city region and beyond. So we actually see this as a great opportunity to get stuck into the detail ourselves, to make the arguments for these interventions based on the kind of economic growth that it will generate for us. It's not about fast and shiny trains just because we'd like to see them. It's actually because of what it unlocks and how that is a key part of rebalancing the British economy towards the north.
Thank you. Good opportunity now. We've all got a good idea of what all the different areas are about, to take questions from the floor if we have any. We've got one towards the front here. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much for that. My name is Neil Anderson from Amy. As I see it, one of the biggest challenges we face at the moment is air quality and the impact of road transport on that. And I'm wondering how we can use our collective strength across the north to take a lead in both achieving our economic growth targets and at the same time tackling this growing issue, an enormous issue of air quality.
Thank you. Who'd like to dig into that first? Yes, Frank.
I think over the longer term, I think what we'll reflect back, and I think personal car use will be seen to be a bit of a quirk of the current period we're living in. So I think if we design the towns and cities going forward, so I think we'll see a lot more modal shift to rail, and I think design of cities in the future should actually be more around walking and cycling. And when people do need to use a car, they probably wouldn't use a personal car, they'd use a car that either rents or is part of shared scheme. So I've actually been looking at, in terms of the growth that we're looking at in the future, looking at housing schemes. That's part of the housing schemes, people who occupy that house will also get access to a shared lease car, but also some of those more innovative things we're looking at, such as having the house that generates energy that's stored, that then powers up the car, and the car then is then available for people to use. So I think going forward, I think we'll see the car as being, like I say, a bit of the past. And actually we need to be focusing more around good quality places that are more around, for local transport, around cycling and walking, and then rail I think has got to step up, and buses as well, where the gaps are there. So I think actually it's more about how we fundamentally design our places going forward.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Richard?
One of the things that we can do collectively across the north to improve the quality of transport and its impact on air quality is work we're already on with, which is around smart ticketing. And in terms of improving air quality, I think there are elements that are regulatory, elements that are to do with lifestyle, but also elements of about simply how you move a lot of people around. I think being able to make journeys easier, so that you know that if I leave my home in North Manchester, I can get to Sheffield just using my smartphone or a smart card. So something of that form makes those journeys a lot easier and a lot more likely to be made. In terms of conurbation-wide transport. I think bus regulation, which not only should make sure we can have an integrated transport system, but also start requiring cleaner vehicles as well. Lifestyle change, more people walking, more people cycling. And I cycled into the town hall this morning. I'm not sure how many other people arrived here by bike. I'm not going to do a show of hands survey. And that perhaps the other element I ought to touch upon is freight. A lot of those capacity improvements that we're talking about within our rail network are about how we can start taking more freight off the roads and getting it onto an electrified rail network. Of course, that only ultimately works when we've got green electricity powering that rail network as well.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned freight there. I think for the panellists who have got coastal connections, how are you working to ensure that your ports are better connected, both for movement of people and obviously freight? Liam?
Yeah, absolutely, because that's very much kind of one of our key focuses. In fact, we'd argue that kind of our ports and sort of our port and logistics industries very much our unique selling point as our kind of key part of the north of England. So there's lots of work that we're doing, both locally with regard to the solutions for connectivity for the ports, both in terms of some of the rail connections in and out of the dock estate, also a number of solutions on the road side of the portfolio of works and how we can improve that. But crucially, working through Transport for the North, we led on the freight and logistics strategy for Transport for the North, which really is about focusing on the multimodal answer to that, making sure that we've got suitable freight paths on the rail network. And actually, it's also about how we kind of market northern ports. One of the things that we're very, very conscious of is if you take imports from India, which are quite sort of representative of most import and export markets, currently 90% of imports are coming into southeastern ports, yet 60% of the goods are consumed north of Birmingham. Ports like Liverpool actually are closer to the end destination, so it's a market-facing opportunity. Added to that, when you actually look at the sustainable transport answer in all of that, we do know by keeping goods on the boat up to Liverpool, it can actually take about 180 million miles of HGV traffic a year off the UK's motorway network. So it's in all of our interest to do this, to decongest the motorway network, but also to give us a greener future in terms of air quality.
Mm-hmm. Angela, on your coast?
Yeah, so we have two ports in Cumbria. We have Barrow and a small port in Workington, and those are both for us ports that we are looking to try to explore further in terms of transporting freight. But I think originally on the question that you asked around how can we all work together, Transport for the North is leading on the air quality as part of one of their key objectives, and it is, as we've talked about, smarter use of technology, choice of how to travel, sustainable modes of transport, and picking up the freight priorities too. So I think it's not just, there's no single answer. I think there's a number of things that we can do, but I think the commitment we've made to try and to work towards that, I think, is probably going to take us quite some way.
Mm-hmm. And Geoff, similarly in Lancashire, is there enough of a weight towards that, the industry, the freight, and satisfying those needs, not just the kind of personal transport requirements?
Yes, of course. And we have a port in Lancashire, of course, Heysham, where we're trying to develop and maximise the benefit that we get from the M50, the Heysham link, as I said before. It's absolutely vital that we make sure that we can get the freight going on that and develop the port for the links with Belfast and Northern Ireland. But in addition to that, a port that isn't in Lancashire but that we can really benefit from and work to help develop, and that is, of course, the Liverpool port, where we can maximise the use of the M58 and the M6 and exploit that, if you like, for the benefit of West Lancashire by providing freight terminals and what have you at that end of the M58 to take the trade from the developing Liverpool ports.
Thank you. Any more questions from the audience at this stage? If you're at the back at all, you'll have to wave very vigorously, or I have our previous speaker at the front here. Thank you.
thank you. It was fascinating to hear about the exciting plans for Crewe and HS2 there. Obviously, one of the key drivers for economic growth in the region is Manchester Airport, which hopefully, subject to funding, will also have an integrated HS2 station there. So I guess the question to Frank and to Sir Richard is what work is ongoing and when will we hear about a joint plan between the two authorities, or the key authority areas there around the HS2 and Manchester Airport?
So I think the first key thing we need to land, and I think there was reference made by the Minister, we need to make sure that HS2B is actually in the pipeline as well, so we need to make sure that that's actually on the table. We also need to make sure that we've got the right bits of kit so that it actually connects back into Crewe properly. I think where we've got to in terms of the partnership around Crewe, we're not at that stage around the airport, but I think that's clearly something we'd want to do. We've had meetings with the airport as Cheshire East Council, making sure that we do work together to make sure that, again, we get the right rail and road interchange there, but also how it supports growth in that part of the borough as well. But I think that's something we need to work on over the next few months to get the same level of partnership work we managed to achieve at Crewe.
Richard?
The expectation at the moment is that at some point in the autumn, HS2 ought to announce final decisions about routing for HS2 Phase 2 as a prelude to a statutory consultation around that. That means that between now and probably the end of September, there is a key bit of work about working through what's described as the touch points between High Speed 2 and the classic network. And there are, I've indicated earlier, there are some real issues that need to be addressed there. Probably the biggest is actually not Manchester Airport Station, it's Piccadilly Station, and how we get the interface there between between High Speed 2, the existing classic network, and the emerging proposals for Northern Powerhouse Rail. And we need to make sure that we make those decisions on the basis of where we're going to be at 2050 and beyond, not where we're going to be at 2025 and beyond. And there is a real danger because of budgetary pressures that we end up with some very damaging short-termism. So when I talked earlier about challenges, I might have said fight instead, because I think we're going to have to fight for some of for some of this stuff. As far as the airport station is concerned at the moment, it's relatively simpler at this time. All we have to do is to make sure that we've got the route right, so we can have a station at the airport, and that we've identified the land take that will be required in order to be able to provide that station. So from a planning point of view, there is probably less to do at this time, and so that work is actually trailing a bit behind the Manchester Piccadilly work, which is really more pressing at the moment.
You mentioned the risk of short-termism there, but what about people who, wanting to see momentum and wanting to see transport changes happen, see something tangible in the coming years? In terms of each of your areas, what can people expect to see, say, over the next 5 years? If you want to go from Liam?
Yeah, of course. I think genuinely in the next 5 years you'll see quite a revolutionised transport experience in the Liverpool City Region. We've just procured a brand new fleet of trains for the Merseyrail network that will be with us in the next few years. That will significantly improve the standard of journeys in and around our city region. As part of Rail North, one gent was asking a question of the Minister about will we be getting brand new trains for the North? Emphatically, yes. Not only will we be getting a significant number of brand new trains, all the existing fleet that will remain will be refurbished to as new standards. So if you're travelling on the Northern Rail network across the north, but also into the Liverpool City region, that in the next couple of years, because the first new trains will arrive next year, will feel like a completely new railway experience. So the rail side's very positive. Richard touched on the new bus powers that our city regions are getting. We're obviously doing the detailed work on that, and we're really looking forward to how we can utilise those powers to significantly improve and integrate the quality of local buses. And also, one of the things that's quite unique for us is that we've got a ferry service across the River Mersey. We are going through the process of looking at procuring a brand new ferry, really to safeguard the future of that very important part of our transport network. So certainly on the public transport network, I think in the next few years in the Liverpool City Region, you will see and feel something significantly better than it does at this moment in time.
Thank you. Mark?
I think in terms of Sheffield City Region, the focus will be on over the next few years getting people to and from Sheffield Doncaster Airport much better than they currently can, and improving that experience. So Sheffield City Region has invested a huge amount of money over the last few years, and it continues to do so to improve road links to the airport. There was a new road opened a year ago off New Junction off the M18, and we've just broken soil this week on the second phase of that, which will complete the link, the fast link between the M18 and Doncaster Sheffield Airport. The airport itself, talking about freight earlier, has exceeded its targets and broke its targets again this year in terms of the number of freight services using the airport. So there's a huge potential there. But actually not only in terms of road, we're also working quite closely with Transport for the North, and we'll be doing over the next few months or so to explore the potential for a spur off the East Coast Main Line into the airport itself. So that will improve connectivity not only between the main Doncaster station into the airport, but actually up and down the East Coast Main Line from Leeds, Newcastle, and obviously down to London as well, providing a much greater reach in terms of the potential passenger usage at Doncaster Airport.
Thank you. Frank, in terms of that momentum around the HS2 Crew Station, what are people going to see over the coming years in communication or master planning?
So there's two elements, Rick. So first of all, we talk about being HS2 ready, and we need to start now. So there'll be a number of major trunk roads or major improvements which are aimed at reducing congestion and unlocking sites. So you'll see major schemes around places like Congleton, Crewe, and in the north of the borough coming out to market. We'll have a master plan for the whole of Crewe, launched in September for consultation. We'll show where these sites will actually be in terms of housing sites and employment sites. And then we're working through the detail around the hub station, but we won't be starting on site until 2021. But we have to actually get a final design more or less sorted out by Christmas for that. So things will start to emerge over the autumn in terms of very clear understanding around our growth strategy, our master plan, the key bits of infrastructure we're going to be putting into the ground now, and then plans for the station will emerge around our Christmas.
Great, thank you. Angela?
Yes, I think it's just worth mentioning for Cumbria that we, following the floods in December 2015, we have probably the largest capital programme of works on our roads at the moment, and we're trying to build in resilience as standard. So we already have some significant work that we're trying to align to more strategic links and connectivity. But the coastal rail, for those businesses who are working with us, we've got public and private sector joint working on the coastal rail from Carlisle down to the Furness Peninsula, linking up with the West Coast Main Line. Definitely see improvements there. And Transpennine routes, so government's already committed to dualling the A66, so that connectivity from east to west, we'll see that. And you'll also see a number of studies which are starting to come to fruition around Carlisle Southern and other local schemes, which for us is all about, again, just improving that connectivity.
Thank you. Geoff?
Thank you. And I guess one of the main things that people would expect to see over the next few years is a significant improvement in the state of the roads in Lancashire, the existing network, which has been allowed to deteriorate, and we need to do something about that. And secondly, we need to have another good look at the subsidised bus routes in Lancashire, which have been seriously eroded in recent years, and we're hoping to reintroduce many of those subsidised bus routes, because if the bus routes aren't there, people aren't going to use the public transport and make the links to other areas within the county. And I guess the major investment that we would want to see so that Lancashire can benefit from HS2 is a multi-million-pounds improvement to Preston Railway Station. Very necessary if we are going to get the economic benefits from HS2.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, Richard, at the risk of sounding short-termist, what are people in Manchester going to see over the coming years?
Hopefully we're going to see the conclusion of the Northern Hub works. Some decisions still sitting on ministerial desks, and a couple with that improvements on Manchester Leeds Railway line, and in that timescale, hopefully the Calder Valley line as well. We are going to be implementing the Buses Act here, and within 5 years we should see a wholly integrated public transport network in a way that London has got in Greater Manchester. It will take 5 years probably, but we should be able to get there over that period of time. Liam's talked about the improvements in train services we're going to see. Greater Manchester is also hoping to take over all of the stations in Greater Manchester and improve that bit of the travelling environment as well. And again, within a 5-year time frame, we should hopefully just about have completed a £1 billion transformation project at Manchester Airport, increasing both apron and terminal capacity and making it a completely, vastly improved passenger experience.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think we have time for one more question from the floor. I think I can see a hand towards the back there. Thank you. There's a microphone on its way to you.
Mark Osborne from the Transport Planning Society. I think transport is defined from getting one thing or one person from one place to another. So planning is very important about how we do our land use. Would the panel consider that we should have a strategic land use plan for the north as well as a transport plan?
Who'd like to take that? We've just got a few more minutes for responses. Strategic land use plan.
Well, I'll say, if you want to be really quick, no. I think getting sort of conurbation-wide transport land use planning is difficult enough. I think there does need to be a transport plan for the north of England, and that's what Transport for the North is on with developing it. It's have a complete, more centralised approach to land use planning of that sort. I don't think will be particularly helpful. As we talked earlier about building a consensus across the north, if we could build a consensus around land use planning across the north, I think we're in miracle territory, not sensible planning territory.
Great, yes.
So for the Constellation Partnership, we won't have a statutory plan in place, but our growth strategy, effectively a high-level spatial plan, because that's really important. So what that will demonstrate is how the infrastructure will connect, but crucially how it will connect to unlocking housing and employment sites. I think it will be too far for us to get aligned local plans at this stage, but it'll be a high-level spatial plan, like I say, which helps us make the case for investment to unlock growth.
Frank, for people who aren't familiar with that name, what areas does Constellation Partnership cover?
It covers Cheshire West, Cheshire East, and then the boroughs in the north of Staffordshire and the Staffordshire Council. It's got places like Stoke, Staffordshire Moorlands, Newcastle-under-Lyme. So it's quite a significant part of geography which connects Northern Powers, Midlands Engine as well, but it's a major growth corridor as well.
Mm-hmm. Great. Do any other panellists want to come in about land strategy? No, great. Well, that seems like a good point to end on. We're just going to go off for a break now, so coffee and refreshments back where you started, but can we just thank my panel?